everyone. Thank you for joining us on this live stream tonight. Welcome to all in chat and anyone who's catching the replay. Thanks for your time. And as you can see, we're welcoming a very special guest tonight. We have Texas Surplus Pro here, and we also have the elusive Mr. Van City Prepper is joining us for this live stream as well. So thank you for coming over to this live stream. I wanted to say hi to a couple people. We've got Jean, who wanted to see a live stream with Mr. VP, so here it is. McBean Scottish Fitness is here. Rita is here. Mountain Grandma, hello. Prepper 101, Prepping by Faith. How's it going? So, could we just start by Texas Surplus Pro? Can you tell us a little bit about your channel?
So I got into YouTube initially producing firearms related content, 2A related content, and then from there I branched out into more preparedness topics around early 2012 when a lot of civil unrest started to kind of pop off around the United States, and then it's just kind of stayed in that low intensity arena ever since.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that when we started our channel, we found your channel and have sort of been following it ever since, and really appreciate your being on the pulse with all the current events. It's really awesome.
Well, thank
you. So yeah, tell us a bit about the types of videos that you make at the present time.
So a lot of what I've been doing, and not to the detail or the production value of, for example, like S2 Underground, where he'll take a lot of aggregate information and then just try and see what direction things might be heading in based on kinetic events or analyzing information that's coming to us from overseas. I've been, at least it's been a few weeks really since I've been actively monitoring what's going on, for example, Ukraine. Partly because a lot of the information is just becoming less reliable with time. So that's been a big focus as of late. And then I've been kind of producing some more meme related content for the shorts, which I found to be pretty effective in terms of growing my subscriber count, since that's kind of the focus of YouTube lately. So kind of redirecting a little bit, and I'll be producing some more long form stuff, maybe 2 or 3 of those videos a month, and then mostly shorts, at least a couple of those a week, I think, for a little while.
And Mr. Van City, since you've been doing a bunch of work during the live streams lately, can you just tell us approximately where you are and how you're now available to join us this time?
Yeah, certainly. Hi to everyone this evening. Nice to be here finally. Yeah, today it's just fortuitously just turned up that I'm able to join the chat. I've just been traveling all day, so I've gone from British Columbia, Canada, over on the west, and I'm way over on the east side in Labrador right now. We'll be conducting some work over this way, slightly different to the BC fire-related work that I've been doing for the government lately. But this is a different operation for the next week or so.
Sounds good. So Texas Surplus Pro, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into preparedness?
So it was, I grew up around Florida, so it was always kind of something that most Floridians do. We actually had, I went to a preparedness trade show, and the turnout was pretty small, partly because most people in Florida, to some degree, kind of like, I mean, even in some parts of rural Canada, they don't necessarily call themselves preppers, but they kind of lean that direction. So just moving beyond, you know, the basic stuff like a generator and plywood, and then analyzing more into how the supply chain works. Then you go down that rabbit hole and you realize, and you could see it too, like if you live in a winter environment, if you live in a hurricane prone environment, you're going to watch your local supply chain completely collapse. You know, your plywood disappears during hurricane season, gasoline is gone, and you realize, well, maybe I should have some of this on hand. And then you start looking at the metrics. You're like, all right, well, I can get by this many days with this much stuff. Maybe I should have a little extra. So that kind of began to steer me in that direction. The idea initially was I didn't want to have to leave my residence for a little while. And I wanted to be further ahead. If something popped off while I was at work or school, would I have the supplies needed to sustain myself for a little while?
Yeah. Absolutely. And anyone who is in this chat that hasn't had a chance to check Techless Surplus Pro's channel, I know, I believe Prepping by Faith has dropped the link. So thank you very much. And I definitely suggest that you go over and check out his channel. So talking about particular concerns that we all have right now, whether it's WW3, finance collapse, or natural disaster, I'd just like to open up the conversation for some of the concerns and potentially talk a bit about the financial fitness piece.
So, I mean, I'm by no means an expert on the financial fitness thing. I just have been following a couple different YouTubers in terms of, you know, what's realistic in terms of what someone can really save. You know, maybe someone who's in their late 20s, early 30s, and how aggressive you have to be in order to at least have some level of comfort once you get to your 60s. And it's a lot more that you have to put back than I think some people would realize, even if you're just putting money into ETFs or things. So I'm still kind of in the infancy stages of learning more about that. But the goal for me right now and what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to pay off all my debt, possibly pay off my truck early, and then begin building a surplus of capital so I can make the homestead thing happen in about a year.
Mm-hmm. Are there a few channels that you really like that you recommend?
One as far as financial fitness that I've found, because he's kind of no nonsense, is Clary. If you've ever stumbled upon him, and he's mostly kind of geared more in the manosphere space a little bit, but a lot of his financial direction is very much applicable to anyone, especially younger people. So you don't make a lot of the same mistakes. And Miss Vancini and I were talking about this right before we went live, where a lot of younger people are making the mistake, and we saw this happen where people are pursuing useless master's degrees. And the situation in Canada is very different. You know, they're not having to take on oppressive student loan debt, and she pursued a relevant master's degree, where a lot of people in the United States are pursuing even undergraduate degrees in fields that have no potential career outlook or prospects. And it's really, really frightening to see the Zoomers are following the same path that the millennials did. And it's sad because I'm sure a lot of the millennials who are in many ways we're becoming boomer 2.0, we're going to indoctrinate our children to do the same thing.
Yeah. What do you think, Mr. VP?
Yeah, I think all of that's pretty smart. Like paying down debt, obviously having a surplus of capital to kind of plow into some property, which is what I take, you know, a homestead being. Like get yourself some protection that way. Yeah, just being smart. It's you know, buy things today if you you know, if you need them ahead of time. You know, whether it's just putting a little bit aside, like I was mentioning, you know, for hurricane season with some plywood or a little bit of jerry can fuel. Like it's all, I think it's all relevant for what people can do.
Jean, thank you so much for the thumbs up super sticker. That is very kind of you. It's nice. I really appreciate it. So, the issues that are going on right now, what are some of the sources do you both think?
Is that for me?
Yeah, sure. Either of you guys. Yeah.
Issues going on right now. Well, like where do you start? I mean, you've got you know, the headline news is, you know, the ex-president of the United States is getting raided. You've got a level of corruption that's, you know, replicates, you know, the fall of Rome essentially as the level of corruption in politics, which is the final stages of a fourth turning realistically before things get ultimately reset and people, you know, the average person loses everything, which is what we're seeing is happening right now with, you know, the consequences of the money creation results in prices going up, and that's, you know, that is the inflation that we see as consumers, which is basically a theft of all our time. You know, it's me being away from home more than I'd like to be just to cover costs. You know, it's this inflation and this monetary debt-based monetary system is basically stealing all of our time, and you know, basically our money. So whatever you can do to kind of offset that, you know, be your own central bank, you know, have things that you need in the future, put them away, be smart about, what you can do, what you can grow yourself, pay down debt if you can, get things off grid, because at some point there might be some banks that fail and there might be some bank bail-ins where people's money is taken away from them to support banking systems. So, I think we've mentioned it a number of times before. If people have the capacity to put away some, currency into, silver or gold in small nominations, whatever people can do, it's, I think it's going to be beneficial this decade. I think everyone in this live stream is going to see a reset in whatever form it takes throughout our lifetime. So that's what I think.
And TSP, you're talking about preserving purchasing power. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
The precious metal thing is something else I've delved into a little bit. I mostly stick to silver sovereigns. I do have some just generic silver rounds, but I feel like the security features of the sovereigns are a little better just because the designs are a little more intricate. As long as you're going with reputable vendors, you should be good. The only ones that I have any question on are a couple silver pandas I picked up over the years, because unfortunately those were counterfeited at various points, but I feel pretty confident all mine are legit. So be cautious if you go that direction. And even the cryptocurrency thing, as we've seen lately, I mean, that's definitely a mixed bag too, but it's something that shouldn't be ignored as part of a whole plan. So I have invested a very small amount in that as well. At one point I held most of a Bitcoin, but I ended up having to sell it off over the last year, unfortunately. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's great that you had that to be able to sell and turn into whatever that you needed it for.
Yeah, it ended up making a decent amount of money for the short time I held it. So.
That's
and
good.
What about the classic question? I mean, if people don't have any extra, what can they do? Because I think one thing that I'm really trying to do is just be happier with less and just live with less in all regards.
I agree. I'm not one to sit here and claim that I'm a minimalist by any means, but there's something to be said for it. And if it's not directly preparedness related, I mean, I have a few different hobbies and things I do, so I'm not going to eliminate those from my life. And it does cost money. But I think really the big things preparedness wise, and the non-sexy preparedness topic that people get uncomfortable is physical fitness. It's very inexpensive. Go put the bug out bag that you have, put it on your back, and go walk with it for a while. That's the basic level of preparedness that you can do, is at least ensure that you will not be the weak link in the group should you have to exfil on foot. As long as you're in a situation where you can work out, obviously, and we've addressed this before, that there are people who can't, but the majority of people who are overweight or refuse to train, it's a choice, and it's something you really need to think long and hard about if you're serious about preparedness. The most fit people are the ones who will make it. I would rather have 6 triathletes on my team than several people who are morbidly obese with 10 years worth of food, who several months after the collapse are going to have all kinds of problems because they don't have their medicine.
I think we've talked about this before, because we've done this before, and I've ran a lot of long distance races in my life, and I noticed, like, when I'm on the fitter side, the way that I handle food is so much different than when I'm less fit. It's sort of the part that doesn't get discussed as much, is that when you are fitter, you can go longer without eating. You can react better to different foods. So it's not just walking farther, it's the whole way that your body operates.
Even just any general emergency response or responding to injuries, how much more quickly you will heal from those injuries if you're in shape. And the probability that you're going to get hurt during an emergency is pretty high. I actually took Texas DPS CRACE course, or civilian response to active shooter events. And in it, they expressly mention how important fitness is in terms of your ability to deal with that high stress event. And they recommended a basic workout plan even.
What do you think, Mr. VP?
No, it's 100% true. Like it's, you know, any situation I've been in, you know, the fitter people, generally physically fitter are often mentally fitter as well. They don't seem to be burdened by, you know, as much. Maybe it's because they've stress tested themselves physically a bit, which helps them mentally. I recall a good friend, pilot friend, we were in the Himalayas in Nepal together, and he had a weekend where he wasn't flying and he wanted to do a 24-hour hike up the Khumbu Valley. And this was to replicate what somebody would need to ascend Everest. And they need to be able to physically walk with a pack for 24 hours, which is, you know, what a lot of people don't actually train for. They might get themselves physically fit, but they don't necessarily have that endurance of being able to maintain motion for that period of time. And he put that to the test, and he went and did like a 24-hour hike, and he literally stopped just to eat and then just kept going again for 24 hours. And it was, you know, a really good test. But yeah, you know, people are physically fit for sure.
So for anyone who hasn't met Mr. VP before, you've done some rescue in the Everest area. Do you think that everybody that goes to that area is super fit to do
No.
trekking?
No, I mean, yeah, it depends. There's two different seasons, really. There's the spring season for the mountaineering, and then the fall season's more trekking and lower scale mountaineering. But certainly, no, not in the fall season. There's a lot of people there that shouldn't be. And also in the Everest spring season, there's a lot of people that just pay for a guided trip up Everest because they can afford to do it. And they shouldn't necessarily be there, or they definitely shouldn't be there. If it was to be broken down on a merit based on their mountaineering acumen, they shouldn't be there.
That's a little scary to think that someone would commit to something as extreme as Everest and not really be ready for it.
Well, it's people can afford to do it. You know, people can afford to do it because they pay for extra Sherpas to get them up and down the mountain if need be.
Sure.
I mean, the Sherpas that are there, they will literally carry somebody to the top, like literally.
Just for the photo, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, how do you get? I think there was a guy last time I was there. He was an East Indian guy, I believe. He was a double leg amputee. Like he's not going to make it on his own, right?
Yeah.
So, he got to the top. Just pack him up. You can do a lot of stuff with money, right? Turn up with a big checkbook.
And then how about do you guys think it's important to reduce the amount of vices in these times, like personal vices? Like if you're going to be fit, what about other stuff? Like drinking, smoking, like do you have any opinion about that?
I think all of those could be a problem on a long enough timetable if someone's really fixated on it. I mean, even just the withdrawals from cigarette smoking can make someone, and I'm sure we've all seen it, right? We've all had people we know that were like, all right, cold turkey, and then they went and became another person for a little while. The last thing you would really want to deal with that as an emergency event, though. But for me, my big vice is caffeine. So I have prepared accordingly. I will not be giving up coffee or tea or energy drinks anytime soon. So
yeah. Well,
I think people should just get to a point that if they had to do without, you know, would you survive? Like whatever that is, you know.
Sure. And at this point, I know that I would probably have headaches for at least a few days.
yeah.
How about you guys?
I'm seeing Jean, not giving up. My wine and chocolate keeps me human. And Double D is heading to bed. Well, thanks for stopping by, Double D. It's great to see you on here. Nate is here as well. Auslander Info, always a pleasure to see you. Uncle Al is here, and X24, Chief Prepper, bunch of folks. Sorry if I have missed anybody, but thanks for taking your time. And Harvey's here as well. So thanks for being here. And hi, Vanessa Kitty. Good to see you. So I know Texas Surplus Pro, there's quite a large firearm aspect of your channel. What is your perception of Canada and firearms? Do you think we're just like way Out to lunch.
doomed.
Well, I honestly, you guys were doing better than most people in the United States probably would have ever thought. Like I wouldn't say it was on the up and up about all Canadian firearm laws, but I know a decent amount about what you could own until recently. Obviously, there's the discussion of banning pistols currently, and then Canadians doing the most American thing possible, went and bought every single handgun that was on the shelf in Canada. So I'm very proud of all of you for that. So don't think that ban's going to go anywhere. Honestly, I really doubt that the popular support is there. I hope that you guys are able to push back on that. But I know that they've gone after a lot of common sporting rifles. There was a period of time about 10 years ago where you guys had access to a lot of stuff we could not obtain in the United States because of various import regulations. You had all the cool stuff from Norinco and China. There were those Chinese clones of AR-15s. You had some weird Mini 14 clones that could take AK-47 magazines, all kind of bizarre stuff coming from Asia that, again, was not permissible. Or we have regulations here on short barrel firearms. So they're regulated. You need a tax stamp for them. They fall into the same category as a suppressor, or in the United States, or a machine gun. You need to get a tax stamp for these things. Which machine guns are now very, very difficult to obtain because they're very expensive here. And I know in Canada there was a period where you could obtain machine guns. I'm not sure what the licensing looks like for that now, but I know you guys didn't. I'm not sure if you regulate suppressors. I don't think you do. And I know that
We're not allowed. We can't have suppressors.
You can't now. Okay. Well, I know that there was no requirement on short barrel stuff for a while because you had all these really cool semi-automatic Sten gun replicas for a while that we couldn't buy either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's becoming less and less. The shopping list gets chopped quite frequently.
Yeah, they did ban pretty much anything with a detachable magazine, more or less, at this point, right?
Yeah.
So, Mr. VP is Canadian, Australian, and British. Can you tell us about in the UK, do people have firearms? I know the answer, but it's just a talking point.
Not really. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so we had firearms there. We had shotguns, and I think the largest rifle I remember my dad having when I was young was like a 22 LR. Like, we didn't have requirement for anything really. Shotguns were more for like pheasant shooting, clay shooting, like skeet, duck hunting, that kind of thing. But other than that, there'd only be the odd person around that had access to, maybe like 243s that would maybe do a bit of venison hunting here and there, like smaller game stuff. But yeah, not much in the UK. Like,
when you were young, it not uncommon to see, at least in rural areas, people with pistols because they banned them in '96. I want to say, does that sound right?
Yeah, I don't ever recall seeing a pistol like in my time in England. Like, maybe it was just a group of people I was around. It wasn't a thing. Like, the first pistol I was exposed to was what was it? I think it was a Colt or something in Australia when I was like 90, probably 98, 99. First kind of couple of years I went to Australia. Yeah, so that was the first pistol I ever really had exposure to.
And as of right now, I think the Australians, I don't know if there's nearly no higher tier of license you can get in Canada to enable you to buy something like an AR-15, is there?
For Canada?
Yes.
Yeah, no, there's only two tiers. There's only restricted and non-restricted. So like an AR-15 would be classified as used to fall under the restricted, but now you can't get a hold of them now.
Because I know that in rural areas of Australia, and this may have changed in recent years, but you could still acquire a lot of different semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines if you lived in a rural environment and could articulate the necessity because of varmint control reasons.
Yeah. Well, you can buy stuff. You can still buy stuff in Canada, like an AR mag will go into a very similar AR platform that's come out by a company in Canada that's basically a straight pull. And I mean, it's a single shot straight pull, but you can use your AR, attachments, your mags and stuff, and your stock and your barrel, and whatever else you want. But it's basically, yeah, it's just a non-semi.
From my understanding, there were certain items, for example, Tavors. Were those banned in Canada recently? Because if I recall correctly, when they were first introduced, I don't even think that they were on the restricted list initially, and they didn't even require, like, if you had the permit, there was no real paperwork other than a cash exchange. There was no registry of certain things and various.
Like a bullpup, you mean?
Yes.
No, you can still get them.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like you can get like a X95 bullpup easily. Like if you can get a hold of one, you can get them. Yeah.
And pistols are
which is strange. You know, that's a short barrel semi-auto. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
And as far as pistols, you guys are capped at 10 rounds officially, right?
Yeah, I don't really deal. I don't have pistols, so we don't have pistols, so I never really keep up with them.
So since this is an aspect of your channel, Texas Surplus Pro, just in terms of self-defense in general, if somebody hasn't thought about it before at all and they want to go that route of just self-defense in general, where would they start?
Well, even before obtaining a defensive tool, which you should have, a lot of it's going to be mindset and preparation, and then scripting out a scenario ahead of time. So if you're confronted with it, you'll be able to effectively react to it. If you're not in the right headspace to meet violence with violence, you probably should look to alternative methods of self-defense. These are not toys, and if you pull it, you need to be prepared to use it, which is why I would encourage additional training beyond the mandated training that is often required for permitting in most jurisdictions. So you have to learn to become dangerous, and then obviously have that under control. If you're not capable of doing that, again, I would encourage you to look to alternative means of self-defense. And if you're in an area where you can't carry, it's non-permissive, they won't cut the permits. We still are dealing with that in a few areas around the United States where they're defying court orders and not cutting permits, where the process is so backlogged with the recent ruling. It's going to be quite some time. Look towards things like pepper spray if you can, and then any other kind of less lethal options that are available. And again, make sure that your mindset is correct. See if you can't find some type of force on force training. There are a number of different courses you can find. Sometimes they might be through like a security guard training school or something, but anything that you can role play, run through the scenario, see how something could actually play out. And again, if you're actually met with that, then you'll know how to react to it.
Great, thanks. And we did get a super chat from Laura. Thank you very much. That's very appreciated. You didn't need to do that, but we definitely appreciate the support. And it looks like Our Tent Life is here, a really great channel, and Our Tent Life is going to be coming to chat with us in the future as well, which is great. And yeah, there's quite a bit of good chat going on here. I'll have to go back and check it out in detail later. So bringing it back to prepping, because this is going to be a shorter live stream. If someone is totally new to prepping, just in case there's anybody listening that is, where could they start on, that's not going to cost a lot of money? Either and both of you guys.
Well, Texas can go first, and I can chip in.
Well, basic stuff right off the bat. Obviously, you need to put some food back. So even if you're starting with rice, beans, and oats, work on that 30-day supply, work on even a week or 2 weeks, and just build on that. Obtain some type of means of self-defense, and start building a network or community around you that will help increase your longevity, because you're not going to be able to learn every skill that you would need to respond adequately to a disaster event. It's not possible. You're going to have to lean and rely on other people. So those would be like 3 big ones. And if you are lucky enough to meet other preparedness-minded people, then they might be able to help steer you and guide you in a direction, and possibly even help facilitate group or bulk buys of food to save you a lot of money as well.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Mr. VP?
Yeah, I mean, that's all good stuff. I think going back to some of your comments there with the firearm training, and I think going through scenarios is a good thing. As far as stress testing is concerned, we do a lot of stress testing with our recurrency training for aviation. Like, you go through scenarios, so in the event that you do see that scenario play out, you have muscle memory to it. And, you know, whether that be for self-defense or food or like resources within your community, you know, do that little bit of role play and say, look, you know, a hypothetical situation plays out, you know, how would we act? How would we all fit into that role? And who would essentially, you know, fill what character within it? And I think mentally planning for certain things, you know, not going overboard or creating your own, you know, group hysteria, but just being mindful and you know, playing out certain events just so that you know, there is an element of awareness, you know, within yourself, just in case, you know, some of these things do play out, because it's very difficult to, I mean, we talk about it as a family, you know, our baseline has shifted so much in the last couple of years to, you know, news events coming up that, you know, a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, would have been astounding. Now it's just a blink of an eye. It's like, oh, it's just another one or another one. And our baseline, we're being desensitized on such a, you know, such a huge level continuously that it's hard to kind of fathom what might turn up next. But I think there will be something, you know, and whether it's a, you know, a financial collapse, or, you know, we're looking at potential food shortages in certain areas which may overflow. There could be a kinetic conflict with two sides. You know, you've got China and the other one right now that we probably shouldn't really say names about, but you know, if any of those really do turn hot, trade is going to be stopped like on a dime. All the stuff that you like to see at Walmart that comes in on a boat, you know, it's going to stop. So you know, I think going through certain things, like, you know, maybe like a role play scenario with a group of people that you trust, and do a bit of stress testing would be a good idea.
Hey, Mary. Hey, Linda. Hey, LG. And hey, Lewis. Good to see you guys and others. Since we're on this topic, and we are wrapping up here in a minute, but Mr. VP, can you tell us one example of one of the things you'd go through? You mentioned in your work, like a reoccurring training, just so people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we simulate mechanical failures, aircraft related failures, you know, whether it be an engine failure or a hydraulic system failure, fire in flight. We do a lot of just whatever you can, you know, the manufacturer recommends for recurrent simulation training. So in the event that you're doing a certain type you know, activity like with that aircraft, that you have the ability to safely put it on the ground as best possible, because at the end of the day, you know, as much as they're maintained to a high standard, they are a piece of machinery, and, you know, machines fail. So
And Texas Surplus Pro, from our previous chats and stuff, I know you have like a really wide background, a lot of experience in different things. What is one thing that you would do in your training as a scenario, just to give people an idea?
If I was to take someone, for example, maybe just through some basic stuff, even just beyond the fundamentals, but drawing from concealment, I have a couple of force-on-force conversion kits for a couple pistols that I have as well. Airsoft is a decent substitution, and depending on where you are, that's probably about as good as it's going to get, unfortunately. But knowing how to make space, playing that into a scenario, weapons retention is going to be huge, because most self-defense shootings are going to happen within 5 to 15 feet. What we saw the other day with, I forgot the shopping mall, but Dickens, who 40 feet away engaged an active threat, a hero, kid with very minimal training beyond the fact that he went to the range often. And I think he has a relative who was in the military who helps him increase his proficiency at the range. That type of scenario could even be factored into your range training. So looking at real world events, pulling or borrowing stories from the headlines, and then incorporating that into your training would definitely be something worthwhile, because it's not like a hypothetical or you're feeding into some type of hysteria, as we briefly touched on, but like, no, this already happened. This might happen again. How would you deal with it? Or we can look at these kind of as a case study and go backwards and say, all right, well, this is what this person did and it didn't work. It cost them their lives. How would we better deal with this scenario?
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Back to Mr. VP, our tent life is wondering if you have parachutes.
No, we don't have parachutes. Unless we're taking people up and they're jumping out with parachutes. That's it.
Have you ever tried that?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. Well, can you tell us, Texas, where people can find you, platforms? I know it's a long list, but
I am pretty much on everything. I'm most active lately on here, Twitter. I haven't done much on my Truth Social, but I am on there as another backup. BitChute, UGEtube, a couple others. So if you see Texas Surplus Pro on a platform, it's probably actually me.
well, I know people can find it. All the links are under your videos and stuff.
They
right?
are.
Yeah. So when they go and subscribe, they can look that up. And just one more question from Uncle Al. What, Mr. VP, what's in your survival chopper kit?
Well, the helicopter's actually got like a Transport Canada mandatory survival kit in it for aircraft that are operating beyond 25 nautical miles from their base. You got to have a survival kit built in for the amount of people that could potentially be on board, so the amount of seats for that aircraft, which would contain signaling equipment, rations, mainly just like the dry style ration, biscuits, fire starter, shelter, axe, saw, those kind of things. In addition to that, I just carry bivy bags, first aid kits, knife, flashlight, fishing gear, couple of extra down jackets, waterproofs, extra batteries for flashlights, especially where I am now, like bug spray, bug net jacket. What else? Some
Spray with you to most of your destinations, or not always?
Say again, I missed that one.
Bring bear spray with you to most of your destinations, or are there some restrictions on that even?
Yes and no, depending on the work. Some of the guys will carry it depending on where we are. It'll just go in the basket of the aircraft, stay outside the cabin. Some places we go, there's like a wildlife monitor there with a firearm. Some places guys take their own, take a 12 gauge Defender. So just depends where you're working. Yeah.
Neat.
So I'd like to ask, Texas, maybe you can start. Any final comments to the viewers? We're going to wrap it up here. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now, as I mentioned, and we touched on the financial element, if you're in a position where you can take a part-time job on to help get you a little further financially ahead, so you can make some higher tier preps and not put things on cards, maybe some secured debt is not the end of the world, right? Like a mortgage, or if you have to take on a payment, and there's workarounds for the vehicle thing if you hunt hard enough, obviously, to find something low mileage and cost effective. But yeah, at the end of the day, you want to make sure, and I think in this environment where the workforce situation could become very volatile very quickly, and I would hate to suggest that in the immediate future we might wake up and see some type of black swan event, but with all these emerging economies around the world in complete shambles right now, I think it's definitely something to keep your eye on. And you definitely want to try and make sure that you have as little debt or ideally no debt that isn't a secure line, because it could definitely bite you if you're sitting there with a mountain of debt and you wake up to an email notifying you that your whole department has been laid off.
Yeah, we talk about that, like, yeah, making efforts to be the best employee in your group, so job retention right now. I agree. Like, whether you can take on some extra work to kind of, boost your preps or ease your financial situation. But other than that, like, be the best employee in the group. So if there is layoffs, like, your likelihood of staying retained is extremely high.
Definitely.
Whatever that takes, just do that little bit extra to stand out as the best employee. I think that that's going to be key. I mean, we're fed so much bullshit right now about the economy booming, and like it's crap. So yeah, just be the best employee that you can be, I think.
Excellent. Mary, your email just went across my screen and I'm laughing about what I read at the beginning. So thanks for that. And thanks to you guys for your time. We will be seeing more of it, Mr. VP. It's just, he's literally been flying during the live streams because Pacific time it was still light out and stuff like that. So usually that's not been possible, but hopefully in the future there will be more. If you haven't had a chance to go find Texas Surplus Pro's channel, I know Prepping by Faith has dropped it a bunch, and our other mod, Harvey, is awesome. Thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate you being here, all of you guys, you both, everyone in the chat, the mods, and yeah, we're gonna wrap that up now. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, guys.
For having me on.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to join this time.